Hello to all of our friends and family out there on the interwebs. We are coming to you live today with Hilda Lunderstedt. So let me start by saying, Hilda, happy Thursday evening, I think it is. I'm excited to have you with us.
Hi, Clarissa. That's awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who are tuning in who may not know me, I'm Clarissa Constantine. I'm the founder of the Parent Tween Connection. And I like to say that we are where parents go when they don't know where to go. One of the resources that we like to bring to you are professionals like Hilda, who have an array of backgrounds and experiences that they want to bring to you, and insight that they want to share with you to help you have stronger, healthier, happier, more productive connections and relationships with those alien beasties known as teens and tweens. So today we are
Absolutely.
talking with Hilda about about a conversation that she titled "Your Own Wounds Are Triggered by Your Children. It's not them, it's you." And I imagine that there's going to be a handful of parents who feel a little bristly about that, perhaps. So before we dig into that, Hilda, why don't we set the stage? Can you give us a little bit of your background and how it is that you came to believe that it's actually our own trauma that gets triggered by those beasties in our lives?
Okay, I'm going to give you the abbreviated version. I have been in health and wellness and healing my whole life. I like more from a chemist, pharmaceutical point of view, and then into nutraceuticals. And I really got to understand how our body behaves when it's ill or when it needs to be healed. And in 2018, I moved to America from South Africa with by myself with my two kids. They were 10 and 12 at that point, and they're now almost 18. No, they are 17 and 19. And I made it through the beastie years. And I hope to offer some value of my experiences. So, disclaimer: I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I have studied, like I said, a lot about healing the body. And about 2020, I started becoming interested in how our body, why are we getting sick in the first place? Where this
Mhm,
illness and this disease in our body come from? And I started on a journey and then studying, went deep into it for at least 2, 3 years on somatic healing, how our body
mhm,
stores memories and how those memories shows up in at times that we least. It shows up as patterns, it shows up as triggers. And I was so fascinated, and I started my own healing journey. And as I was healing and I dealt with all my childhood, what we call traumas and wounds, everything around me changed. My relationship with my children changed. Suddenly they became amazing um, little people. And so it is possible.
mhm,
As and there's different family dynamics. Now, I'm a single mom. I raised my kids by myself since they were 3 and 5, and there's two-parent households but what if we understand that? And I had a beautiful conversation the other day with my son, and I'm learning so much from him. I don't know what we were talking about, and he said to me, the crux of it was, Mom, I have your DNA, but you don't have mine. And in his language is, I am you, but you are not me. And it's like, oh my
mhm,
gosh, how many parents wants to live through their children and make our own dreams, the things we never got to do and the things we wished, and we live our lives through our children. And the lesson to me is for parents to remember our children is us, but we are not our children. And we need
mhm,
to give them, we owe it to them to heal those wounds as parents that we deal with, that we can give them wings to fly. And just a
mhm,
couple of weeks ago, I'm really studying energetics, the universe, the laws of the universe. And one of the conversations was, by having children, we created our perfect mirrors for ourselves. So our
mhm,
children shows up to show us everything we haven't. We've been parked somewhere for another day for something that's not now. And our children shows up to show us where we need to love ourselves a little more.
Mhm.
And that is what I want
Absolutely.
this conversation to be. If we as parents
Awesome.
can learn how we love ourselves, we teach our kids how to love them. And that ultimately should be our legacy and the lessons in life.
Awesome. So let's start
Yeah.
then with what you identified as childhood trauma and talk about how you see that that impacts the way that we show up as adults. Not even relevant to the kids yet, but how does our childhood or how do our childhood experiences show up for us as adults?
So let's look at what the wounds or what we call trauma is really experiences we had that overwhelmed our nervous system that we didn't have capacity to deal with at a certain age, like at 3 years old, when and the biggest one is when your brother or sister come and steal your toy and you start crying. What do parents say? Do you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. In that split second, your emotions was not valid. And you as a
Okay.
3 or 4, whatever age you're old, had to suck it up and not cry because you know, and that I think is the start of it. So in those, it's not even a
Mhm.
big thing, but for a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, it's huge. And so little
Mhm.
things like that is get stored in our body. And that's just one example. I think what a lot
Mhm.
of adults really what shows up for them is I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. And I know I had to deal with like every time you come home with a report card, like, why didn't you get 100? Like you got 97. What's wrong with you? Why didn't you get, so that's that nothing's ever good enough. And if you
Mhm.
think like the external voice of a parent becomes the internal voice of that child as it grows up. So I think a
Sure.
lot of the people I work with and I encounter has the I'm not enough
Mhm.
uh, wound. I'm going to put it like that. And, or I should be better. That
Mhm.
those are the things. And I think most successful entrepreneurs are driven by that, let's call it a wound, but
Mhm.
by that feeling of if I do better, if I, then I'm going to be enough. And it is so easy to pass that on to our children if we're not
Mhm.
even aware of it.
Sure, and I can definitely relate to that. I certainly experienced some of that as I was growing up. And like you said, like it feels like it's so small. And I recognize that from the parent perspective, it's but I know you can do better and I want to push you to be the best that you can be. And I understand that it is likely very well intentioned. At least I know that that was the case in my own experience. My mom very much intended that to be motivating to me. And unfortunately, it had the in some cases it had the opposite effect and it's definitely lasted for
Mm,
me. So then the next step is like, how does that then, obviously we can pass that on to the kids in our world. Also, full disclosure for folks who are listening in, I don't have children of my own, but I've worked with kids and teenagers for 27 some odd years. So I can hear a lot of this from the kids' perspective, Hilda, like what you're hearing from the parents' perspective. So
mm.
then when the kids come along, like you said, you create perfect mirrors for yourself. And we tend to it seems in many cases pass this on to them. How does this then impact the relationships that we have with the young people in our lives?
So I think that's when the arguments come because we as children shows up, we get triggered. That thing in us, that wound, that thing we haven't dealt with get triggered and it shows up. We have an emotional response and we might have an outburst or something towards our child that might be relevant, it might not even be relevant. And now the child is reacting to our response, and that's how
Mhm.
this cycle of my parents doesn't understand me and my child is like this or like this, and we start labeling our children. Whereas if we understand, and I'm going to give you an example. The other day my son, I grew up in the 60s and 70s where we still got hidings when we were naughty. And my son was walking through the house, like stretching his leather belt that's made that slap sound. And I was so triggered. And I thought, what is going on? It's like nothing. And then I didn't respond because I know I'm wiser, but it was the same sound that belt made before my dad came to give us a whacking with the belt. And just that sound took me back to that. And if I didn't know triggers and I could instantly map my trigger back, I could have done something like shouted at him or screamed at him or done something that
Mhm.
could be harmful. So it really shows up in our triggers when our kids and
Right.
teenagers are master triggers of the adults nervous system.
One of the thoughts that just came up for me is a conversation that I had, goodness, probably 15 years ago with one of the first life coaches and business coaches I ever worked with, that he said, all of our past unhealed wounds, experiences, traumas, as you're describing them, are kind of
Mm.
like a wash rag that's soaked in gasoline. And there's a match nearby, but it hasn't been the match has not been lit, right? So there's no flame at the moment. But when we recognize that we have just a like a visceral disproportionate response to something, that it's basically like whatever that trigger was, whether it's your kiddo, slapping the belt, or the tone of voice that the kids may adopt, or whatever it is, what they say, the way they say something, whatever it is like that match getting lit
Uh,
or striking that match on the
yes,
concrete to create the flame. And now all of a sudden
yes,
that wash rag that was wasn't doing anything, wasn't creating any problems, albeit it was soaked in gasoline. It was just ripe for the opportunity for that flame. And then all of a sudden, it's like this big fire, this big conflagration. And in relationship, it's arguments, it's fights, it's the same conversations that are unresolved that we keep coming back to again and again and again and again. And I mean, we
yeah,
see that in
it's
our partners
everything
as
that's
well,
an
if we're
emotional.
partnered.
Mm. It's that there's an emotional charge, and
Hmm.
that's the sign. Oh, here's something that we need to look that I need to look at. And I heard a beautiful thing the other day when someone was saying it's like having ketchup on your face, and then you look in the mirror and you wipe the mirror clean instead of wiping your own face. And how many
Hmm.
people are trying to wipe the mirror by blaming the other person? It's because of you, and it's because of what you've done or said that I feel the way. And that is literally wiping the mirror by trying to get the
Hmm.
ketchup off your face. And I just thought that to me made a lot of sense.
It really does. Absolutely.
Mm.
Well, and so then, when we take the steps to heal, we've got these again, these triggers, these traumas that aren't necessarily massive, but it's your feelings don't matter. Or I know one of the ones that I got a lot was children should be seen and not heard.
Oh,
I
for sure.
also I had experiences as you with certain aspects of unpleasant experiences with the belt, put it that way, right? But there's also a lot of other things even today. I know there's a lot of families that have gone away from physical reprimand, if you will. Like they don't spank their kids, which again, I'm not going to say right or wrong. I'm saying that there are other things that they can be doing, even, without the physical, that can have similar consequences. Like you're saying with well, why wasn't this strong enough, or this grade good enough? Or, one that I
Mm.
referenced, my mom was like, I graduated seventh in my class. And she was like, well, that's great, but why weren't you first? So that's why I personally can definitely relate to that. But let's take a minute and let's also talk about some of the things that are more globally recognized as bigger traumas, right? Like the big T trauma, as opposed to what some might classify the little T trauma. If we've got bullying. Bullying is rampant here in the US. I don't know where it is, what it's like in other countries, but
Yeah.
it's huge here, and certainly families navigating divorce, like that can be traumatic for kids as well. And so what can we do for ourselves if we've
Mm.
recognized, hey, I've survived some of this stuff. You've mentioned some of the somatic healing. What are some other steps that we can take to help heal that stuff for ourselves so that we don't pass it on?
Great question. And you broke up for a little bit, but what I'm kind of is if we, okay, I'm back. Mm. Are you there? I'm so sorry. I don't know if it's my signal or yours. It's probably mine. Are you
A
there?
little technical difficulty, but yeah,
Can you hear me?
yep, I've got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Do you want to just repeat what you, so besides somatic, what else can we do? Is that your question?
Just other recommendations that you have, yeah, of steps that people can take to help heal their traumas.
I, for me, the other thing that's sort of related is our belief system. Is what is do we our belief system, every thought and our actions, every experience from the outer world is filtered through our belief system. And if we consider that our beliefs are formed before the age of 7, we really as adults need to believe what do we believe. The statistics has it that 75% of our beliefs are not ours. It's passed on from other people to us when we were children, and our belief system is the software we run on, and it's our GPS. So it's like we in our 30s and 40s and we're still driving with a map book, the old map books. We've never updated our GPS and our navigation system. So that's just really go map the patterns of what you believe. And that will flow out the whole, what do you believe about relationships, about money, about work? That will be so insightful on, oh my gosh, I don't even believe this, but why do I respond or react to the things that comes up in my life that filters through that belief system? And I think seeing our children not as extensions of ours, but as individuals by themselves, and see them as unique human beings will also help, because the reason why become or the role of a parent is just to create humans that can be autonomous, that has purpose, and that has some level of mastery. Then we succeed as a parent. So that is what we should be focusing on. Who is this little human? And if we look at ancestral, we bring into this life 7 generations back, and our children are the 7 generations of two, your husband, the dad, and the. So it's a whole unique set of ancestral genetics and epigenetics that this little human has that we've been entrusted on.
Mhm,
And I don't think we need to, this really the this the saying that your external world is the reflection of your internal world. If you want the external world to change, all you have to
mhm,
do is change yourself and your internal world. So we don't have to do much else other than figure out what is it inside of us that we need to work on. And it literally instantly, that's just the law of the universe, the external world change around us. And if we then see our children
mhm.
as individuals, and we don't have to live through them, we give them the space to
Mhm.
figure life out for themselves.
Absolutely. Well, and so then to your point of like an epigenetics
And
from a
the
scientific
world,
perspective is
the
showing, sorry, like epigenetics, like you said, is showing that we've got this history of impacts on DNA from traumas in the past. So when we change that now, that changes the genetics of our lineage for 7 generations to come.
isn't that to me was the biggest motivator, is to know that I'm not just doing it for me, but for the future 7 future generations that's coming. It's not going to deal with post-war trauma and post-depression parents type of thing.
Mhm. Well, and I was fascinated as I started studying some aspects of
Yeah.
epigenetics that they show that, descendants of folks who were of the Jewish faith in Germany and under the Nazi regime, that their DNA actually mutated and that descendants of those folks who are long gone now, but the descendants have that mutation in their genes, and the science is finally showing that our emotional state, and I mean, certainly there was a lot more damage from a physical perspective, right? But just the emotional trauma that they experienced certainly can have that kind of an impact as well. And so I love the idea, like you're saying, if I had chosen to have children, that's quite the motivator to to make change,
Yes.
and to break these. We talk about breaking generational cycles, but it's
Mm.
not just about the generational cycle between your generation and the impact on your kids, but the continued generational impact that comes along
Yeah.
with the healing that we can do.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I hope that you, at least what you were saying, came through consistently. I'll definitely go back and listen, and maybe have you come back for a reprise of the conversation. Seems like the internet's finally cooperating on my end again. But so what I'm going to do is go ahead and wrap up this portion of our conversation, Hilda. As I mentioned to you before we started, and I want to mention to everybody who's tuning in, everything that we do at Parent Tween Connection is based in what I call the foundations of connection, which came to me and a conversation that I had with myself when I was like, why is it that often teenagers will seek someone outside of their nuclear family to discuss some of the big things with before they're ready to talk about it in their nuclear family? Like, what is it that we outsiders, if you will, are able to provide that they don't necessarily feel that they have in their own nuclear family, whatever that looks like? And so the foundations of connection are these. And Hilda, I'd love to know which of these seems to come up most resonant or like strikes you most this evening. So we start with all the phrases spell out the word connection. So we have create a safe place, observe, non-judgment, nod and smile, explore, challenge your truths or curiosity, take your time, innovate, own your own story, and nurture.
Is this for me and my children, or
In
in
any
to me,
capacity.
the non-judgment stood out, because I think as we judge others, it's really come from judgments from ourselves. And if we really want to
Mm,
feel peace, is to stop judging ourselves, because then we can really fully show up for, and especially moms, we are so hard on ourselves. So I
mhm.
think the non-judgment, nobody wants to be judged. Our children doesn't
Yeah.
want to be judged by us.
And here's a great example. I totally thought that you were going to go with own your own story because the title of this whole conversation was It's Not Them, It's You.
Oh,
Like we have to look internally.
but so similar. By owning your own story is be your own truth, and you cannot. Yeah, that was the other one. But it's, I think to me, is you cannot own your own story if you judge anything. You
Absolutely.
That non-judgment is the foundation for freedom.
Mhm. Awesome.
A-
All right. We're
And
going to
then you
wrap up this
can,
part of
based on
our,
that, and all your others to me was the creativity and everything else.
yeah. Awesome.
Sorry.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up this portion of our conversation. No worries. We're going to head over to the Parent Tween Village where Hilda and I are going to have a conversation about how to help your teenagers set their own boundaries and their life rules. Now, if you're tuning in and if you've heard some of our other guests this month, you may be wondering why this concept of boundaries keeps coming up. Well, because in February, we were talking about relationships and communication, and boundaries are critical there. And this month, one of our themes is self care, and boundaries absolutely play right into self care. So, if you are not yet a member of Parent Tween Village, you can come on over to parenttweenconnection.com/Parent Tween Village. Learn more about it. It is a membership and you have access to all of the exclusive conversations that we've had with our guests like Hilda, everyone that we've had before, and all the folks who are coming yet in the future. So, Hilda, I'm going to say publicly a very, very heartfelt thank you for joining us and sharing your perspectives. And thank you for your patience with internet issues on one end or the other.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Thank you. It was great to be here.
Awesome. Have a great evening, everybody.